I'm Adam Epstein, and this is The Dispatch. Okay, fellow dispatchers, today we're going to talk about authoritarianism. Yep, we hear the term tossed around cavalierly, or synonyms for it: fascist, dictator, tyrant, autocrat. This is the era of Donald Trump. This is our nation, polarized, deeply dysfunctional, and under this president, incredibly divided. A gaping chasm, the likes of which we haven't seen since probably the Civil War. Bill Barr, Trump's proto-fascist lickspittle, that's right, lickspittle, look it up, of an attorney general, told Congress this week that our derelict response to COVID-19 is, of course, Obama's fault. Everything's Obama's fault. And that Trump never suggested Americans should ingest bleach, as a potential treatment for the virus. Probably have to roll that tape, but yeah, right. If you don't understand why the election coming up in November is the most important in all of our lifetimes, and not just at the presidential level, then I need you to look up the following words, okay? Make a checklist for them. And you know what, dispatchers? There's going to be a final exam. So study hard, because they're all on it. Here we go. Cult, authoritarianism, lawlessness, gaslighting, fraud, malevolent, despotic, propaganda, mendacious, complicity, conspiracy, rule of law, tyranny, nationalism, norms, enabler, amoral, venal, insidious, Fox News. The 20th century was dominated by twin evils. Fascism, mainly, though not exclusively, in the form of Nazism and the terror of Hitler's Third Reich. Of course, fascism was also exemplified by Benito Mussolini's tyrannical reign in Italy. And of course, the Cold War, right? The Cold War, otherwise known as the fight against communism. From roughly 1947 to 1991, thereabouts, the Soviet Union occupied a large swath of Eastern Europe. It's called a sphere of influence. And a so-called Iron Curtain divided the globe between East and West. China, which is still communist to this day, although it has a capitalist economy, paradoxically enough, was its own, still is, dictatorial force, with Mao Zedong leading China's very own Red Revolution. A communist party has been in control of China since 1949. But if history doesn't exactly repeat itself, it does, as a wise person once said, rhyme. Though the term Nazi or dictator was from time to time hurled at George W. Bush and Barack Obama, it was often a vitriolic, if lame, attempt to smear and caricature leaders with a broad brush. It was also grossly inappropriate. But irresponsible, cheap as well, historically inaccurate, despite whatever you may feel about any of those gentlemen's politics. But at a time when Europe, particularly countries like Hungary and Poland, morph into outright autocracies, the presidency of Donald Trump compels us to ask some questions. Questions maybe we hadn't thought we had to ask or haven't wanted to think about before here in the United States. In her new book, Twilight of Democracy, The Seductive Lure of Authoritarianism, the historian Anne Applebaum reminds us that the European drift toward right-wing populism that's going on right now may have just, reached our own shores. And this time, it's not hyperbole, it's not political smear, nor is it drama. With Trump and his willing and able accomplices, America has been forced to withstand an outright assault on truth, right? Trump's dreams, Orwell's nightmares, as I once wrote. But the damage might just be irreparable. As Applebaum writes in an article in the July-August 2020 issue of The Atlantic, okay, it's on the newsstand right now. In English, the word collaborator has a double meaning. A colleague can be described as a collaborator in a neutral or positive sense. But the other definition of collaborator, relevant here, is different. Someone who works with the enemy, with the occupying power, with the dictatorial regime. In this negative sense, collaborator is closely related to another set of words: collusion, complicity, connivance. This negative meaning gained currency during the Second World War when it was widely used to describe Europeans who cooperated with the Nazi occupiers. At base, the ugly meaning of collaborator carries an implication of treason. Treason, a betrayal of one's nation, of one's ideology, of one's own morality, and of one's values. The current Republican Party, save Mitt Romney, who voted to remove Trump from office in February, has been the reason Trump has been allowed to betray America. We had a taste of it when Trump gave his inaugural speech, perhaps the angriest and most combative in historical memory. In speaking of American government and its representatives, Applebaum reminded us what Trump said, quote, "Their triumphs have not been your triumphs," end quote. Nothing summed up this moment better than George W. Bush's reaction to Trump's words. As he reportedly put it, that was some weird shit. America is nothing if not an idea. And in these corrosive times, the ideas found in Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, quote, "a government of the people, by the people, for the people," end quote, feel like a dream deferred. Lincoln's Republican Party was founded in 1854 as a means of barring the expansion of slavery into newly admitted states. The United States was young. We didn't have 50 states then. So every time a state would come in, you'd see whether or not they were free or whether they were slave. And so the Republican Party formed, right, in opposition to that. But that was 1854. The Republican Party of today has morphed into a noxious gaggle of cultists. That's right. Today's grand old party regularly sows racial discord, openly now, disdains the FBI and the Justice Department, right? Sees foreign interference in our election, however galling that may be, as a largely benign form of transactional politics, if you can believe it. And while Trump's ascendance feels like a full-throttle descent into fanaticism, he's far more symptomatic of a malignant populism, deeply endemic to the American body politic. Since Richard Nixon's Southern strategy, which, by the way, borrowed copiously from a racial segregationist named George Wallace, Republicans have been happy to stoke and exploit racial panic and division in an attempt to solidify the white working class vote. Today, though, the age-old Republican shtick about the rule of law, family values, and national security, a rhetorical facade that really never had any relation to reality, has finally been unmasked. In their craven amoral obsession with doing business regulation and tax cuts to serve the plutocratic class, Republicans have been willing co-conspirators to Trump's lawlessness, venality, and autocratic wreckage. Our nation does not have a parliamentary system, folks, like Europe, where multiple parties coalesce and form a majority. You know, in Europe, you can vote for a third or fourth or fifth party, and those votes count. Here, we have a two-party republic consisting of three co-equal government branches, each one designed to put checks on the other. When constitutional mockery eclipses ideological differences, the words "we the people" cease to be worth the parchment they're written on. It's precisely for this reason that the framers enshrined an impeachment clause in our Constitution. It's also what James Madison meant in the Federalist Papers, Federalist number 51, when he wrote, "Ambition must counteract ambition," quote unquote. As the third impeachment of a president showed, there is no counteraction if there is no separation, meaning everything the framers feared, a reckless king with an abetting royal band of sycophants, has seemingly come true. What price partisanship, or better yet, what price complicity? Our national disaster need not have happened. If the Senate had removed the president in February, right, we wouldn't be here. But how about the 25th Amendment? Well, can't seem to put that into effect these days to remove him. Trump sided with Putin against American intelligence agencies in Helsinki in 2018, proving that he's not working in the interest of America. But witnessing all this in real time, on tape and live, power mattered more to Republicans. Legislators afraid of Trump's tweets, right, and nervous about their donor class, right, have put us in this position. Pence, Pompeo, Barr, right, believing that God had chosen them to play special roles in this biblical moment. Okay? If all of these things weren't going on right now, then perhaps 150,000 or more deaths from COVID as of this broadcast, right, and an unprecedented economic catastrophe could have been avoided. The November election is now less than 100 days away. But if Biden wins, then what? The damage is so severe, the wounds so raw and tender, perhaps not able to be healed in Biden's single term or 2 terms. If we end up on the road to recovery, what will that look like? How long will the road be? Freedom isn't free, okay? Let me say that again. Freedom isn't free, and democracy is hard work. Can we continue, in Lincoln's words, to work toward, quote unquote, a more perfect union? I ask you all, fellow dispatchers, not where do we end, but where and how do we begin? I'm Adam Epstein, and this is The Dispatch.